There's a new Avengers team in town and it has Deadpool on it. How did this happen? Welcome to the Complete Story Series, where I take trade paperbacks and single issues and I break them down into digestible bites to help you understand. Then I read it dramatically back to you. All alterations of the panels, text, and images are to prevent copyright problems, and all art is owned by its respective companies. Don't forget to support this great industry by buying these comics online or at your local comic book store. Our story begins with an old man who is dying of cancer. As he lays on his deathbed, death doesn't come. Something else does. That night he did die, but it wasn't the end. He was reborn by what visited him. He is now suddenly able to hear plants, but he wasn't alone. He was saved. He was inhuman. 8 months later, Deadpool leads the charge for the new Avengers, or so he thinks. The old Steve Rogers commands this new group of Avengers, consisting of Spider-Man, Dr. Voodoo, Deadpool, Johnny Storm, Rogue, and Synapse. Their job right now to stop a new android, but this one is different. It absorbs everyone's power. So Johnny blasts it with fire and Rogue takes it down. Dr. Voodoo looks and tells everyone that the android seems to have organic cells covering its body, and it can copy abilities of those that it comes in contact with. Synapse tells them that it doesn't have a brain that she can hijack, but she can control the birds around it and they begin to peck the android. Deadpool has a better idea though. Let's see how the android likes being me. Deadpool allows the android to touch him and the android begins to say how it is now Deadpool. And then it dies. Spider-Man begins yelling at Deadpool. What if he would have taken your healing abilities and not your cancer? And Deadpool tells him, yeah, but hey, you can't argue with the results. Steve begins to round everyone up and he tells them that they need to look good for the camera because the news crews are about to show up. But Spider-Man doesn't care. He tells Steve that Deadpool is too reckless, and as long as Deadpool is on the team, he quits. Steve doesn't give him any resistance, and Spider-Man walks off. But now it is time to speak with the press, so Steve wants to make sure everyone can see that mutants and Inhumans can work together in unity. Everything is going well until a reporter pokes a hot topic for Rogue by asking, why did she stay behind when all of the mutants left? Rogue tells him that she stayed because she wouldn't give up on her home just because of some inhuman poison. Steve tries to calm everyone down. Just tell everyone they're like family. Sometimes families fight. But the only thing that the paper caught was that Rogue was shouting about inhuman poison. Rogue tells Steve that she's sorry about the mess and they all head off to the Avengers headquarters, which just so happens to be a theater. Steve explains to Rogue that he just wants them to be shown as a group with unity, even though she doesn't really get along with Synapse and Deadpool. The reason Deadpool's on the team is because people love Deadpool. How do you think the Avengers are getting funded right now? As Steve continues to go down below, Rogue leaves so that she can take care of some of her other business. She flies off and goes into a lab, and that's where she takes off her gloves, showing that she's been infected with the Terrigen Mist. The only thing that she can do is take anti-Terrigen and wait, hoping for better results. Down below, Steven goes to talk to Dr. Voodoo and asks what he thinks of the new team. He tells Steve that there's been a lot of overturn with the members lately, and with Spider-Man leaving, things may be a bit difficult. Also, has anyone seen Quicksilver? Steve tells him that Pietro took a personal day. He's trying to enjoy life, knowing that Magneto isn't his father. But over in New York, as Quicksilver and Synapse are enjoying a nice evening, something's wrong. The birds keep bothering Synapse, and suddenly she collapses. Quicksilver grabs her before she falls, but as he tells her he's going to take her to the hospital, she tells him no, they need to go to Boston. An hour later, over in Boston, Deadpool flies in with the rest of the Avengers to find Boston covered in spores. Rogue and Johnny jump in to help Quicksilver as he starts to fight off the monsters that are attacking the people. And Quicksilver starts to tell them that these creatures are coming from these plants over here. They start out as these pretty whatever these are, and then soon after, this creature pops out. Rogue quickly punches it as the rest of the group begins to show up. Synapse informs them that she can't feel the creature's brains, and Voodoo tells them that they aren't normal animals, they have no souls. He can only sense the abyss. Over in another part of the city, an officer tries to tell someone everyone is being evacuated. But soon after, bees start to swarm around the officer, and he begins to shout, "Who are you?" The man turns and tells him, "He is the Shredded Man." Soon back with the Avengers, everyone begins to fight off the creatures, and Deadpool tells everyone to please not call PETA on him. Rogue tells Synapse to try and disconnect the creature's brains, but she can't. And Rogue responds with, "Are you sure?" So Synapse wants to know why she can't just trust her when a woman shows up with a child beginning to turn into one of these plants. Synapse uses her abilities to tap into the child's mind and boost its immune system, but she can't fully stop the progression. They need to find the source of this. Rogue tells Quicksilver to get the woman and the child to a hospital, but over with Voodoo and Johnny, Voodoo tries to understand the mechanics of this attack. Johnny isn't sure about any of this, but he knows some people who just might be. So as he flies off, Rogue tries to call him out, but Quicksilver runs by telling them that there's probably someone they should all meet, and he runs back off. Johnny took a body over to MIT so that the scientists can try and figure out how this is attacking people. But back with Rogue and the others, they continue to fight through the creatures hoping to catch up with Quicksilver. Rogue asks herself, why is nobody listening to her? Is it because she's a woman? But Deadpool tells her that it might be because she's a mutant. Voodoo tells Deadpool that he's not really helping. And Deadpool tells him that that's his mutant power, not helping. Over at City Hall, the mayor informs the reporters that the situation is under control, but Shredded Man comes to tell her that it's anything but that. That's when a giant stalk comes crashing through City Hall. Shredded Man then begins to tell him that this will be the first of many to spread over the world, but he gets stopped when Quicksilver runs in and punches him. Quicksilver asks, "Who are you with? Hydra? Someone new? Actually, it doesn't matter, and I don't care. I will stop you." Shredded Man tells him that is so true. No one cares, and now it's too late. Vines begin to come out and wrap around Quicksilver, but he runs back over to grab Shredded Man, and as he pushes him back, Shredded Man opens up part of the stalk. He then pushes Quicksilver in, and the stalk starts to close. Quicksilver begins to shout that the Avengers will come for him, and Shredded Man tells him, "Hush, you're just hallucinating. You're already dead." Brother Voodoo begins to reach out to Quicksilver, and once he gets an idea of where Quicksilver is, he tells Deadpool to cut the trunk open and do it quick. Voodoo then goes back to telling Quicksilver to brace himself. Things are not what they seem. He's dead. He grabs Quicksilver's hand and he tells him not to look back, and as Voodoo pulls him away from the demons, they escape out into the shining lights of the real world. But as they leave, they hear a voice telling them that he doesn't like to be cheated, and Voodoo now owes him. Deadpool starts to do CPR on Quicksilver, saving his life, and that's when he calls Synapse to tell her that they have Quicksilver back. But when Quicksilver asks Voodoo who that voice was, Voodoo tells him a voice few souls, living or dead, have ever heard. But he won't speak its name for fear that he might conjure it. Over in the streets, angry citizens demand to be let out, and that's when one pulls out a gun and then he's suddenly hit with a beanbag. Deadpool remembers when he first knocked someone out with a beanbag. It was 3rd grade, but Rogue tells him no stories. Rogue tries to calm everyone down, but they don't listen, and they end up throwing a beer bottle at her. But before they can see who threw it, the crowd begins to run. These creatures are now overrunning the streets, and the team begins to hold the line. But that's when another bright light shines from behind them, and everyone turns to see Cable. He tells everyone to cover their ears, it's about to get loud, and he blasts the entire alley full of creatures. Cable begins to tell everyone that he came from the year 2087, and their mission ended in a failure. The whole world will become infected, and the only people living are a few Inhumans. Cable tells them that he is now in charge, but Rogue argues why they should trust someone who could possibly be a terrorist. Deadpool steps in and tells Cable, "Hey look, these aren't some inexperienced mutants, these are the Avengers, so please put all of your cards out for everyone." Cable begins to explain that these creatures are a new species of flora. He then shoots down a winged creature, and another voice can be heard stating that these flying creatures are how the contagion spread. Deadpool looks at Cable's shoulder to see that it's his computer talking, and he asks did he bring a Tamagotchi for everyone? And Cable tells him to meet Bell, a bleeding edge AI from the 2080s. Cable then pulls out a vial telling everyone that he developed an enzyme inhibitor so that they need to give it to everyone who was infected and they need to synthesize more fast. Quicksilver steps up stating that this is his cue, and he runs off, but Synapse notices something. Everyone turns to see the Shredded Man step out, and before asking, Cable blasts a hole through him. Shredded Man pulls down his hood telling them that he isn't what they should be firing at. But then Rogue flies in to punch him as he grabs her and throws her off. Voodoo sees the cop next to him and he asks what he's done to the cop. Shredded Man tells him that he will use the people that are escaping to spread his cure. He starts to spread his mist over everyone, and Cable is the only one who manages to get a mask on. Bell tells Cable that if he doesn't chase after the Shredded Man, his top priority is to help Rogue. She's already been infected with the Terrigen mist before this even started. Cable tells Bell to make more antitoxin when he notices Synapse isn't affected. She's not affected because this mist targets humans and mutants, but not Inhumans. Cable tells her to follow the Shredded Man but do not engage. He will be there once the team recovers. Synapse starts to chase after the Shredded Man, and then he appears in front of her and she asks why? Why do this? The Shredded Man tells her that the Terrigen mists instruct them. The mutants are to be smited. They are incompatible. But really, the humans are the real problem. Synapse punches him, asking him who he is to decide. She keeps going until she grabs his mask, demanding to know who he is. She can't read his mind. And he tells her that he went through a dramatic change after Terrigenesis. And Synapse looks up, stating, it can't be. He looks down, asking her, don't you recognize your own grandfather? 8 months ago, when the old man was dying from cancer, he went to help another person from Terrigenesis, and it was Synapse. Instead of being able to feel plant life, she felt the life of animals. But with this, the old man can save the world. Back in the current time, Synapse tries to tell him to stop this, but he tells her that plants need a mass extinction. It's the only way to save the planet. She tells him that if he loved her, he would stop, and he shouts back, telling her, no one will stop this. Elsewhere, as the Avengers begin to get back up, they fight off the creatures trying to attack them. Rogue complains, stating that she told Steve that they would need more flyers, and that's when Deadpool tells her he can fly. Come on, sugar. Deadpool jumps in her hands, yelling fastball special, and Rogue launches him. And as he's going, Deadpool states that this is even better than Logan said. He takes on another flying creature and asks Quicksilver if he can get him some more ammo. So Quicksilver runs and grabs a gun store clerk and brings him back. The clerk tells him it's an honor to meet them, and Deadpool says thanks. Now let's drop some monsters. The two of them begin to shoot down more flying creatures. Back over at MIT, the scientists begin making the antitoxin, but they need to test it first. Johnny takes it upon himself to test, and he injects himself with it. Quicksilver then shows up asking if it's ready yet, and Johnny tells him yeah, and anyone who's infected needs this. So Quicksilver begins running at top speed, injecting every single person, but as Cable and Rogue continue fighting, Cable sees something. He sees Synapse breaking Shredded Man's neck, and then everything is destroyed. That's when he realizes her breaking his neck is how the mission will fail. Cable starts charging through, blasting holes in his way when he finally reaches Synapse. He calls out to her, telling her not to do it, and he tackles her off of Shredded Man. As he gets up, he asks if what he heard is right. Is this man her grandfather? And she tells him yes, he was her grandfather. Cable turns to the man and he tells him that he is from the future, and Shredder Man asks him if he's here to tell him that his plan failed. Cable tells him that it actually did work and he's here to stop it. In the future, the only people alive are the Inhumans, so he made a second formula that actually removes the Inhuman immunity from the plague. Shredded Man tells Cable that he's ready for death, and Cable tells him he knows, but is she? And he turns his gun and shoots Synapse. Shredder Man calls out to Synapse, but she tells him she doesn't want to die, but she doesn't want to live with the shame of what he's done. She goes on to tell him that there's still time for him to remember who he was, and he gets up to tell her humanity's end will be worse. War, disease, rising tides. He could have stopped all of that, but now his will is undone. And with that, the plague begins to lift. Synapse tells him that they can help find a cure for him, but he tells her no. As of now, she has lost his love, and next time, there won't be any mercy. Shredder Man falls spitting bugs and tells her that with removing all of this, he has destroyed everything, including his body, but he can grow more. As everyone begins to show up, Synapse asks Cable, at least for now, don't tell everyone that he was actually her grandfather. Because for now, it's time to go home. Deadpool gets out of the helicopter telling Steve that he's quitting! But Steve didn't accept any of his past resignations, so he's not accepting this one either. Steve then asks Cable if he plans on sticking around, and Cable tells him no. But when Steve tells him that their next mission will be to take down Red Skull and retrieve Xavier's brain, Cable thinks that he can stick around for a bit. Steven then tells everyone that they did the entire Avengers organization proud, so it's time to rest up, because they don't know what's going to be thrown at them next. However, somewhere in space, a man in silver flies through a giant bug that's attacking a spaceship. After doing so, he asks if he has permission to come on board. When the people on the ship ask him where he's from, he tells them that he is Hank Pym, and the silver around him is his old friend Ultron. If you're curious about how Hank Pym and Ultron have been merged into one, then check out our video, The Rage of Ultron. That explains that backstory, and I'll put the link to that down below. But otherwise, I hope you guys enjoyed Deadpool's Avenger Team. And if you want to chat with me about this comic or any others, go ahead and follow me on Twitter at Comicstorian or Instagram at Comicstorian. And don't forget, we have a gaming channel, Eligible Monster, where we bring you video game comic books every Friday. And I can see you over there right now.